The world mourned him as a billionaire hero. But while his face lit up candlelight vigils, he was 3,000 miles away, watching his son from the shadows, alive, and ready to fight for the one thing money couldn't buy back. The funeral was lavish, over the top, and exactly what Marcus Wolfe would have hated. A marble coffin lined in white velvet, flower arrangements towering like monuments, and eulogies written by PR assistants pretending to know his soul. His face, airbrushed and confident, was plastered across every screen in New York. Billionaire philanthropist, tech visionary. Gone too soon in a private jet crash off the Amalfi Coast. Except Marcus wasn't gone, not really, not yet. 3,000 miles away, in a rundown motel on the edge of Santa Fe, a man with shaggy hair, a gray hoodie, and a beard grown far past professional length stared at his reflection in a cracked mirror. His eyes, still sharp, still Wolf's, looked back with a mixture of exhaustion and something else. Hunger, not for money. He'd had enough of that. For clarity, for purpose, maybe even redemption. He lit a cigarette with hands that used to sign billion-dollar acquisitions. Now they trembled slightly, part detox, part fear, mostly the realization that he had finally done the thing he'd fantasized about during board meetings and charity galas disappeared. Faked the plane crash with the help of one of the few people he trusted, his pilot Reggie, a Gulf War vet with secrets of his own. Burned the logs, let the media do the rest. Nobody had questioned it, not really. Not even his ex-wife Dana, who now controlled most of his empire through a tangled web of legal maneuvers and prenups. They'd grieved efficiently, sold off assets, held candlelight vigils, and moved on. Meanwhile, Marcus had stepped off the grid with $300,000 in cash, a new name, James Carter, and a duffel bag containing 3 changes of clothes, a Glock 43, and a photo of a boy he hadn't seen in 8 years. The boy's name was Caleb, his son, or so Marcus believed, though the court never acknowledged him. Dana had erased him from that part of her life after a messy paternity battle, one that Marcus hadn't had the stomach to fight in public. Now, in the stillness of his self-imposed exile, Marcus didn't miss the money, he didn't even miss the city. But he missed the boy. The way he used to grip Marcus's finger with his entire hand. The way his laugh made everything, stocks, scandals, the suffocating expectations, fall away. He tapped ash into the motel's plastic cup and opened his laptop. No internet, just offline maps, a few encrypted files, and one document, a custody case reopened last month, filed quietly, not by Dana but by someone named Grace Ellison, a name he hadn't heard in a decade. Grace had been Dana's personal assistant back when the Wolves circled their marriage. Smart, observant, too honest to last, she had vanished just after the divorce. Now she was back, and she was filing for custody. Which meant Caleb was in trouble. Marcus closed the laptop and stood up. His back ached. His neck popped, but something inside him surged. If he was dead to the world, he could finally do the one thing he'd failed at when he had everything: protect his son. He packed the duffel, zipped up the hoodie, and stepped into the dry New Mexico morning. Time to become someone worth finding. The drive east felt like shedding a second skin. Every hour brought him closer to the version of himself he used to be, and farther from the one the world mourned. Marcus didn't take highways, too many cameras. He wound through desert backroads, eating gas station jerky and sleeping in his car under skis so big they made his former life seem like a fevered dream. He reached Denver just after midnight, parking 2 blocks from the address Grace had listed in the court file, a modest duplex, lights off, a plastic tricycle on the porch. He watched the house for 3 hours. At 3:18 a.m., the porch light flicked on. A woman stepped out. Older hair in a loose bun, a softness around her that belied steel, Grace. She saw him before he could duck away. Her eyes widened, but she didn't scream, didn't run. Instead, she opened the gate and walked toward him like she'd been expecting this moment. "You're supposed to be dead," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus removed his cap, "So I've heard." They stared at each other, then Grace opened the door. No questions, no drama, just the unspoken agreement of 2 people who had once trusted each other and were now too tired to pretend they didn't. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and worry. She poured tea. Marcus didn't drink it. He stared at the hallway. "He's not here," Grace said. "Dana has him for now." "Then why the custody filings?" "Because she's spiraling. Rehab last year, a new fiancé who doesn't like kids, and Caleb, he's old enough to notice. He's scared. I had to try." "Why not tell me?" She met his eyes. "Because you were dead, Marcus, and because you left." The accusation wasn't sharp. It was tired. It carried the weight of a decade without explanation. "I couldn't fight her then," he said, "but I can now." "How? You're a ghost. You want to help Caleb's, then stay a ghost. Let me handle it legally." "Legally isn't fast enough." She flinched. "What are you planning?" He didn't answer, not yet. Not until he knew what this new world expected of him. but one thing was certain: he wasn't going to watch his son disappear again. The next morning, Marcus woke on Grace's couch to the sound of a blender grinding frozen fruit. The domesticity of it made his chest ache. He hadn't heard a blender in years that wasn't part of a luxury hotel's breakfast bar. Grace was in the kitchen, hair still damp from a shower, in jeans and a faded college sweatshirt. She handed him a glass without a word. "You think smoothies are going to fix this?" he asked. "I think you need something green in your bloodstream that isn't mold or whiskey." He drank, bitter with hints of banana. She still knew what she was doing. Over breakfast, they talked logistics. Dana had moved back to Greenwich after her last rehab stint, renting a sprawling estate from a hedge fund exec who'd fled to Switzerland. Caleb went to a private school where no one asked too many questions as long as the tuition cleared. "He's not allowed to talk about you," Grace said. "She told the school you were some disturbed figure from the past, a bad dream." Marcus's hands clenched. She rewrote everything. "He doesn't believe it, not fully, but he's starting to wonder. That's why I filed. I couldn't let him forget you." Marcus pulled out the old photo, the one from the duffel. Caleb, maybe 4 years old, on Marcus's shoulders at Coney Island, cotton candy on his face, pure joy. "I need to see him just once. I'll stay hidden. I'll wear a mask if I have to." Grace hesitated, then slid her phone across the table. "She takes him to the park every Saturday morning, same place, same bench, like clockwork." He memorized the location. 2 days later, Marcus stood at a distance from the playground. It was almost unbearable, watching from behind the safety of a tree line. Then he saw him. Caleb was taller now, almost unrecognizable, except the way he ran. Arms flailing like he was challenging gravity, just like when he was little. Dana sat on a bench, sunglasses hiding what Marcus imagined were tired, restless eyes. Her new fiancé stood stiffly beside her, disinterested. Marcus didn't breathe. For 10 minutes, he was just a man watching his past and his future intersect without him. And then, by some impossible instinct, Caleb stopped mid-run and looked directly toward the trees. Right at him. Marcus turned fast and walked away. His heart thundered. Maybe the boy recognized him, maybe it was coincidence. But it was enough. Enough to tell him one thing. The next time Caleb saw him, Marcus wouldn't be hiding. 3 nights later, Marcus waited in the dark, parked in the back lot of a cheap diner just off the highway outside Greenwich. He had watched Dana's house from a distance, learned the rhythms. The new fiancé, Julian, left each night at 9. Dana drank wine alone on the back porch until 10. Caleb's bedroom light flicked off just before 11. It was now 2:07 a.m., no cars in the driveway. House silent, no movement. He moved. Grace had helped. She still had contacts. One of them was a locksmith with shaky morals and a silent understanding that cash paid for silence. Marcus didn't ask questions. He had a copy of the key now. He opened the back gate, quietly, slipped across the lawn. Every step tugged at memory, back when he still lived here, when this garden was where Caleb learned to ride a bike, before it became someone else's world. He entered through the back door, stepping lightly on floors he once paid for. The house smelled like expensive candles and loneliness. He didn't go upstairs, that would have crossed the line. Instead, he walked to the living room, sat on the couch, waited. At 2:14, footsteps, soft and bare. Dana. She froze in the hallway, silhouetted by moonlight. Her eyes found him instantly, and didn't blink. "I knew it," she whispered. He didn't speak. "They said the body was too burned to recover, but I knew you were always too much of a coward to die." Marcus exhaled slowly. "I came to talk." She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You came to steal him." "I came to protect him." Dana stepped into the room, no fear, just fury. "From what? From me?" "From what you've become." She stared at him, face unreadable. "You don't get to decide that. You gave up that right when you disappeared. You buried me before I could fight. You faked your death before I could finish destroying you, so let's not pretend you're here for justice." Silence fell between them, charged, bitter. Then she did something he didn't expect. She sat down across from him, looked him dead in the eye. "You want him to know you're alive? Fine. But if you show your face, I'll bury you again, for real this time." Marcus leaned forward. "He looked at me in the park. He knew. You can't erase that." She flinched barely, but enough, then stood. "Leave before I call the cops. Next time you come near him, I won't be so generous." Marcus didn't move. "You're hurting him, even if you can't see it." Dana's voice dropped. "You think you're the only one who lost him. You think I wanted to become this." She turned, walked upstairs. Marcus sat in the silence for a long while. Then he got up, left the key on the coffee table, and disappeared into the night. Grace opened the door with the wary look of someone who hadn't slept and didn't plan to. Her phone was in one hand, suspicion in her eyes. "You went to her," she said, not a question. Marcus walked past her, his gaze heavy on the floor. "You were tracking me." "I guessed. You disappeared all night. She called me. You know what she said, that you broke into her house. That it took her a glass of wine and every shred of self-control not to call the cops." He dropped his duffel on the floor. "I had to see for myself. I needed to know how bad it was." And her voice was tight, barely contained, like a stretched wire. "She's broken and she knows she's losing him." Grace crossed her arms. "You think that justifies creeping through her house like a ghost?" "She threatened to bury me again," her words, "if I ever show my face to Caleb." Silence stretched between them. "Then don't," Grace said finally. "Don't show him your face, not yet." Marcus looked at her like she'd suggested amputation. "He saw me in the park. He knows something. If I disappear again, it'll only confuse him more." "You don't get to parent through guilt." "I'm not trying to parent," Marcus snapped. "I'm trying to be something real in his life before she erases me for good." Grace stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You think showing up now after 8 years is going to fix what you broke?" "I didn't abandon him." "No," she said coldly, "you abandoned the fight." That one hit like a slap. She turned away before he could respond. "There's a custody hearing in 2 weeks. Dana doesn't know I'm representing myself. She thinks it's a bluff. If she loses her temper in court, if she slips even once, I can push for emergency guardianship. But if you get caught, if you blow your cover, this entire thing collapses." Marcus stared at the floor, fists clenched. "You have to trust me," she added, "or you're going to lose him again." He nodded slowly. "Okay, no more surprises, I'll stay out of sight." The words felt like sandpaper in his mouth. 2 nights later, Grace handed him a sealed manila envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "A favor from someone who owes me more than he'd like to admit. Inside is a burner phone and a security badge." Marcus opened it. Inside, alongside the phone, was a visitor pass to Caleb's school, with a different name and photo, but unmistakably his face, reshaped by time and a haircut. "You're not going inside," Grace warned. "This is only if things go wrong at the hearing, backup plan." He held the badge like it was radioactive. "You believe it'll come to that?" "I believe in contingency." In the days that followed, Marcus lived in shadows. He moved from motel to motel around Connecticut, never staying longer than 2 nights. Grace sent him updates through encrypted messages. Dana missed another counseling session. Caleb told his school counselor he didn't want to go home, small fractures slowly widening. And then one morning, Marcus got a photo. No message, just the image. Caleb sitting alone in the school courtyard, chin in hand, staring into the distance. His backpack hung open beside him, forgotten. Marcus stared at it for almost an hour. Then he sent one line back. "We're running out of times." The courthouse was beige and boxy, a building designed to humiliate quietly. Marcus sat in the back row of the family court gallery, hood low, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Grace was up front, alone at the plaintiff's table. No lawyer, just a manila folder, a steady jaw, and a stubborn hope. Dana swept in 10 minutes late, all angles and perfume and fury. Julian followed, bored and on his phone. Caleb trailed behind them, shrinking in his too big blazer. He looked smaller than Marcus remembered, and older. The judge was a silver-haired woman with a voice like iron filings. Formalities were brief. Grace spoke first. "I'm not his mother," she said. "But for the last 6 months, I've been the only adult in his life who listens without yelling, without drinking, and without asking what he did wrong. I'm not here to tear her down. I'm here because he's afraid to go home." Dana's attorney objected. "Irrelevant, hearsay, emotional manipulation." The judge overruled, just barely. Marcus's fists curled under his sleeves. Then Dana took the stand, lipstick too red, smile too tight. "I've done everything I can for my son," she said, tears expertly summoned. "I've been through hell and back, rehabs, therapy, and I've always put him first, always." Marcus felt sick. And then Caleb was called. His small shoes echoed in the too big room. He sat, knees bouncing, gaze fixed on his lap. The judge leaned forward. "Caleb, can you tell me how you're feeling?" He hesitated, then said very quietly, "Tired." "Of what, sweetheart?" He looked up and for a second, just a second, his eyes scanned the gallery, past his mother, past Grace, past the lawyers. And stopped. Right on Marcus. It was quick, the moment snapped like a twig, but it was enough. "Hey, no. Caleb swallowed, I just want someone who sees me. The room fell silent. The judge dismissed him gently. Dana looked like she'd been slapped. Grace turned around, her eyes met Marcus's. And for the first time he saw something crack behind her determination, fear, not of losing the case. Of what would come after. That night Grace knocked on the motel door. Emergency ruling, she said. She keeps temporary custody, but there's a hearing scheduled next month. Judge wants a psychological evaluation. Marcus nodded, she saw something. Grace nodded back, yeah, but not enough. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Marcus asked, what if we lose? She didn't answer right away. Finally, then we wait or we runs. He looked at her. She was serious. The motel room was quiet except for the steady hum of the old AC unit. Marcus stared at the ceiling, a half-eaten sandwich on the nightstand, his thoughts too loud for rest. Grace's words echoed, then we wait or we run. Running, again, he'd spent the better part of a decade on the run from the media, from his past, from fatherhood itself. But this was different. This wasn't about hiding. This was about choosing, and the choice was about to cost him everything one way or another. His burner phone buzzed. Unknown number, just a message. Midnight track 4, Grand Central, come alone. No signature, no hint, but he knew Dana. Track 4 was mostly deserted, one security guard with earbuds. The last train had left an hour ago. Marcus moved through the shadows, hands in his pockets, heart heavy. The platform smelled like old metal and coffee dregs. The air had that subterranean chill that clung to the bones. She was waiting near a column. Black coat, hair pinned back, no makeup. No Julian, just Dana, looking more like the woman he married and less like the ghost who haunted tabloids. You came, she said. I figured you wouldn't call unless it mattered. She studied him. I hate you, I need you to know that. He nodded, I've earned that. She glanced around, her voice dropped. He talks about you in his sleep. Marcus's stomach turned. He doesn't say your name, but he calls out for someone, and he cries, real tears, the kind he used to shed when he'd fall and wait for someone to pick him up. And I can't keep pretending I'm enough. Silence filled the gap between them, raw and jagged. Dana looked at him, trembling. Do you love him? I never stopped. She pressed her lips together. You disappeared, you let me believe you were dead. I had to die to survive. That's not an excuse. I know. More silence. Then she pulled something from her coat, a folded envelope, worn, handwritten. She handed it over. It's his, he wrote it after court, said he wanted to mail it but didn't know where. Marcus took it with shaking hands, unfolded it. I think I saw you, but maybe I dreamed it. If I didn't, I hope you come back. If you do, I'll wait, but if you're not real, that's okay too. I just wanted to say I'm not mad. No name, just a drawing. A stick figure with big shoulders and a tiny boy riding on them. Marcus wiped his eyes. For once, he didn't try to hide it. Dana spoke again softly. We have one shot at this, one shot to do it right. I'm not the enemy, not anymore. He looked at her, truly looked. Maybe for the first time in years she was. The next week was a storm of lawyers, counselors, signed waivers, and uncomfortable meetings. Grace stayed at Marcus's side the whole time, fierce as ever. I'm not letting you screw this up, she said. You get one shot at being his father again. Don't vanish, don't rage, just show up. And he did, day by day, documented, transparent. The court grilled him, therapists questioned him, social workers shadowed every visit. But slowly, it shifted. Caleb came to the visits with less fear in his eyes, started asking questions. Where were you? Why didn't you fight? Do you still love me? And Marcus answered, everyone, truthfully, no spin. By the time the final hearing came, Caleb asked to speak. He stood in front of the judge, hands at his sides, chin high. I want both of them, he said. I know that's weird, but I love them both, and I don't think love means picking one. Even the stenographer paused. 3 months later, Marcus sat on the porch of Grace's duplex, watching Caleb eat ice cream and try to teach a neighborhood dog how to skateboard. He was back, not as a billionaire, not as a myth. As a man. Behind him, Grace stepped outside and handed him a beer. You did it, she said. No, he replied, we did. You still have nightmares. Les. They sat in silence for a long while. Then Grace asked, what now? Marcus watched his son laugh. Now, he said, I show up every day until he knows I'm not leaving again. The past was gone, the money, the fame, the myth of Marcus Wolfe, all buried. But what he found in the rubble was real. And for the first time in his life, that was enough.